I've never actually owned a Leica, but you've owned a couple. What do you think
I
about?
have. I've owned a
Yeah.
bunch of Leicas. I've owned some Leica M's. I've owned the M8, the M9. I had the
So
M240.
is it all like a Mystique? And why are they so expensive? Is it worth it to buy one?
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of both. I mean, I feel like Leica has been renowned for their incredible lenses. Like they've made like some of the best lenses in history over,
Hmm.
especially during their heyday,
It all
like during
started
the
with,
50s and
yeah.
60s.
I
Like they
think
made
it.
like some really incredible designs. You know?
Yeah, I think so. I was reading something a little bit ago, and Henry Cartier-Bresson, he when he bought a Leica, it wasn't like the most popular camera to buy, really. But since he became so famous and he became renowned as like the photographer, then the Mystique kind of picked up, and everybody wanted to own a Leica.
Yeah, I think that was part of it. But I think that the biggest thing was that Leica made photography like portable. They were the ones that came up with the 35 millimeter format. They were the first ones that came up with that size or whatever, and they built the camera around it so it could travel and stuff. Actually, the guy who was at the architect or engineer at Leica, I think he had some sort of like health problem or something, and that kept him from going out and doing photography. And but he really was into photography, and so he got hired by Leica or Lights at the time, I think, something like this. I'm paraphrasing, and he designed the smaller sensor so that, or this, well, smaller so sensor then, but the smaller size camera so that
Okay,
he
so
could
this
take it
was
out into the
you're
world.
saying that this is the first camera to shoot 35 millimeter?
Yeah, the Leica is the
Oh,
first
okay,
35
that makes
millimeter
sense.
camera, and he
Yeah.
designed it so that he could travel around with it, and it could be smaller and stuff. And then it just took on, and all of us have kind of embraced it ever since. I mean, we still use it. We just call it full frame now.
Yeah.
That full frame is full 35 millimeter frame.
So I kind of have like my ideas about Leica, and I think a Leica camera is almost like a piece of art, right? So it looks really cool. It's designed with really nice metal, and it's like really simplified. I kind of see it
Yeah.
as like,
But it's still really functional. Like you could still take that camera out and make like get remarkable results and stuff. It's just it doesn't have as many of the kind of features you'd want out of your everyday camera. Like it doesn't have as many of the pro gadgets that we've become accustomed to. But it's like there's a heritage of it, and that's like you feel like you have this beautiful photography machine.
well, I mean, you if you're into like photo books, you look at all these photo books, and they're like all these guys shot on a Leica, and I think sometimes it's because it was like the camera of the time in a way.
Right, yeah.
But nowadays there's so many options. I don't know if it makes sense to make a purchase on a Leica if it's not kind of like this beautiful piece of art that you really like holding. That
Or if you just have like an insane amount of money laying around and you just want to
yeah, you
have
just
it.
want to burn it. Yeah,
You just want to have that thing.
yeah.
But like, so I've had some Leica. So like I was saying at the beginning, I've had a bunch of the Leica M series, which is manual focus glass, and it's kind of that it's based around the M3 design, which was like the 50s.
Mm-hmm.
Bresson kind of camera, but so that over that whole period they kept making like that camera, but over time it went from being film and then they put a sensor in it and stuff. But they have other cameras like the Q, and I had the Leica Cube for a while. That is more of like a modern day camera. It has face detection and it has like EVF and all that kind of stuff that we're kind of accustomed in our mirrorless cameras. It is rocking good, but it's a fixed lens, and you're always at 28 on that, which is nice. Like if you're a street shooter, that's a really cool camera. I really liked having it, but you couldn't change the lenses on it.
Yeah,
So like,
and that one is autofocus. So
yeah, it has
yeah.
autofocus. It has everything that you would expect out of like a new camera, and it makes remarkable
Yeah,
pictures.
I think that one definitely makes a lot of sense if you are like a street photographer and you want one camera. 28
Yeah,
millimeters
that's
is
what
a nice
I think
focal
that's
length.
what they made it for, with street guys. Like if
Yeah.
you were a wedding photographer like us, I always was like, man, I'd really like to have this as my wide camera, and I wish I could get an 85 to go along with it. If I had a Q85 and a Q28, I might switch to Leica for good. Like that's cool.
Yeah,
But
I wish that they would make the Q in some different focal lengths.
yeah, I don't know
that'd be
why they never
interesting.
did that, because that's definitely
But the Q's
For
always
some
been an
people.
interesting camera to me because it's not like priced crazy high on the used
yeah,
market.
it's a little less expensive, especially
Yeah.
than the M. It's like half the price of the M, but you get a lens, and you
it's
get
like the price
like
of one Leica lens, pretty much.
right, you get a lens with it, which is
Yeah.
a good lens. Like the lens that comes in it it's a good lens, and you get all the modern features that you're used to in nowadays cameras, which makes
Yeah.
it more interesting, but it's still very expensive.
Yeah. So what Leicas have you shot exactly? You've shot the M8, the M9. Have you done
Yeah,
the
the
M9?
M8 and the M9, and then I had the M240 for a little while. That camera's really good.
Mhm.
And then
Yeah, the ISO, I've looked at some images from the M240, and it seems like you could, if you were able to pull off manual focus at a wedding, you might be able to shoot that one because the ISO looks pretty good at 3200.
yeah, and then I also
Yeah.
had the Leica Q, which is a 28 millimeter fixed lens, like full frame, and I also had the Leica Type X, which was like a cropped version of like what the Leica Q was, but it had a 35 like Summilux built onto it. It was like an f1.7 lens. Or
Do you
something.
think Leica?
That thing was cool too. That
Do you-
one was definitely more cost effective.
Do you think Leica is more about the sensor and color science, or more about the lenses?
Yeah, well, I think that it's the lenses myself because a lot of time the sensors and the sensor tech is, I mean, it's not theirs. They purchase
Yeah,
it from some other company.
Yeah, I
that makes
think.
it.
Yeah. Sometimes.
But they make the lenses, you know.
Yeah, sometimes you
At
might be
least the
getting
M lenses.
less in the sensor performance, but the lenses are, widely regarded as like the best. And they,
Yeah, and Leica also has lights, which does like like really high end optics for like binoculars and for like crazy magnifying glasses that are used in like laboratories and stuff. So
Yeah.
they have like a lot of synergy between the two, so they can like make advancements that other companies might not be able to make because they make glass for both.
Yeah, it's pretty.
Yeah, so Leica's a pretty diverse, interesting company, but it's just very expensive, and I feel like a lot of photographers aren't ever gonna shoot Leicas.
Yeah,
They just won't. It's just too expensive, and it doesn't make a lot of sense. But if you do have one, like I've had a few in my life, I always feel like I baby them and I love them, and I'm really thankful that I have them. But I never rely on them or anything. They're kind of like
yeah. What one appealing thing to me about a Leica is that it gets like a little bit of that brassiness the more you use it, and so it's
yeah,
like
it kind of gets like
Yeah.
that worn in look.
yeah, it's like a piece of art that kind
It's
of
kind of like having
yeah,
like
it
a
comes
guitar
more-
that you
more
just bang
unique
on
over
it
time.
forever,
yeah.
and it just looks beautiful because it's
Yeah.
so used up.
Yeah. Do you look at the new Leica releases and say to yourself, like I wish I, or do you like want to buy?
I
them at all?
haven't been on the Leica train for a while. Ever since I moved over to Fuji, I've been kind of pretty content with my Fuji setup. But I mean, if I had a ton of extra money and I wasn't running like a photography business and I was just shooting just to shoot all the time and I had extra money, I'd probably consider that Leica SL.
Yeah.
I feel like that's a pretty interesting setup, but it's very pricey. And if you got a couple lenses, like you're talking a pricey setup. But that would give you autofocus and full frame and I think a lot of the functions that you've come accustomed to on DSLRs and mirrorless cameras.
Yeah. Well.
Yeah. Anyway, that's Leica cameras.
Yeah.
They're not for everybody, but the people who do have them understand why they have them and they love them.
Yeah. I can say I could understand owning one as like a piece of art or like one camera that I just kind of brought everywhere with me. But
yeah, like your everyday camera.
yeah,
you just had a
and
bunch of
there's
cash.
some wedding photographers who are crazy enough to shoot whole weddings on Leicas too with manual focus, but that's not really for me or.
That's a tricky endeavor,
Yeah.
and the photographers I know that do that, they swear by it because they've done it so much that they say they can feel it or something. But in my mind, their shots are probably going to be more out of focus than autofocus.
Yeah. There's something to be said for having autofocus on all your cameras, so you can actually make more pictures and probably get more in focus.
Yeah, manual focus is hard.
Yeah, it's
And
really
if-
kind of niche, and it's a niche product, and I think it's cool that they're still around. But yeah, I don't know. I think that there is merit to the Mystique, and if you're really into the history of photography, maybe buy one and try it out.
Or
too.
if you're just in love with the look, like Leica glass and Leica pictures have a look that's very unique to them. And when you see it, if you're just like always in love with those pictures, then maybe you should
Yeah.
get a second job and save up some cash and get a Leica. It's like that's the one for you, and you'll just have to like figure out how to make that tricky beast work all the time.
Yeah, it's definitely a camera by photographers in a way. So the M8 was based off of Kodachrome. Like they wanted to make
Yeah.
the M8 sensor look more like Kodachrome.
Yeah, but you had to use like these strange filters on the lenses all the time.
Oh, I forgot about
It's like
that.
purple on them all the time. It was crazy because
Yeah.
Anyway, they were definitely tricky, and you couldn't shoot that camera over like ISO 640. Not
That's horrible.
6400,
Yeah,
640.
Oh, man.
Like it was
Yeah, you'd
so
have to shoot in
grainy.
perfect light all the time.
Yeah, those cameras were tricky. I mean, after like the M240 was cool. Like you could shoot it up to 50,000 ISO and with relatively no problem. So like you could use it just fine. But
Yeah. Well, yeah,
Again,
this
no
was
autofocus,
yeah.
yeah.
We
Yeah.
we just had a couple of random thoughts on Leica here. We don't know exactly what this was about, but please
it's about Leicas.
about Leicas.
Yeah, it's about
But,
Leicas. They're
yeah,
cool,
just
right?
a brain dump on Leica here.
Brain
so,
dump on Leica.
Yeah, like and subscribe. Feel free to leave a comment below if you guys have any questions about Leica or anything else for that matter. And we of course are open to suggestions for new videos too. So
Yeah, thanks guys.
thanks.